Hey, before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. I never thought my 42nd birthday would end in silence. The house smelled like roasted chicken and melted chocolate. Candles flickered on the cake, casting shadows that danced along the walls. I stood near the doorway, hands in my pockets, watching the scene unfold, heart beating slower than usual, as if my body already sensed betrayal before my mind could process it. Mara, my wife of 8 years, had insisted on hosting a small dinner with just close friends. I arrived early to help set the table, folding napkins just so, imagining the laughter and warmth of a normal night. But the way she moved now, her smile too practiced, her eyes darting, something felt off. My gut tightened. The doorbell rang again, and she opened it with a flutter of excitement. In walked Jason. My stomach sank. Jason, the man I'd met at a conference 3 years ago, the one she always mentioned in passing, always too friendly. He hugged her like it was nothing, and she leaned into him with a familiarity that made my blood freeze. I laughed it off quietly. Maybe I was imagining it. I poured a glass of wine, the liquid trembling in my hand, and tried to focus on the table. The kids were upstairs, supposedly sleeping, leaving just the adults below. The candles reflected in the polished wood, warm and soft, but shadow lingered, creeping over the edges of the room like smoke. Then, out of nowhere, Mara kneeled in front of him. My hands dropped to my sides. The sound of her laughter, the way it shook through the quiet dining room, made something inside me shatter. I wanted to speak, to yell, to grab her by the shoulders, but instead, I smiled. I stayed silent. I set down my wine, feeling the weight of every heartbeat, every breath, like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. And as I watched them, I realized this wasn't a moment I could just confront. It was a choice, and I knew, even before it fully unfolded, that the next hour would change everything. The clock ticked loudly in the background, each second hammering into me as if warning of the storm to come. Mara's laughter mingled with Jason's low chuckle, filling the room like a cruel symphony. I could feel every detail. The faint scent of her perfume, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, the glint of the ring I had given her years ago, reflecting the candlelight. It all felt like a cruel, intimate betrayal. I told myself to breathe, to think. I stepped closer to the table, pretending to admire the cake, but my mind raced with fragments of messages I brushed off as harmless. "Can't wait to see you tonight, smirking face," she'd texted, disappearing from our shared chat just before dinner. Her phone had buzzed in her pocket multiple times tonight, each vibration making my chest tighten. I'd seen the name on the screen earlier, Jason. My hands itched to grab it, to throw it across the room, but I kept my composure. They didn't notice me watching, and I let the silence between us stretch, letting the room hold its tension. Mara's eyes met mine for a brief second, flickered, and then returned to him. That glance, it wasn't shame. It wasn't regret. It was something darker, something calculated. My stomach churned. I wanted to scream, to shatter the glassware on the table, but a part of me stayed rooted. I realized I had all the time I needed. I could watch, remember every detail, and when the moment came, I could act without hesitation. My heartbeat settled into a slow, cold rhythm. Jason leaned in, whispering something that made her laugh again. The sound made my throat tight, but still I smiled. The calmest smile of my life. I could see the truth in her movements now. She wasn't caught in passion or weakness. She was showing me, displaying me, and the knowledge didn't ignite immediate anger. It sparked something far darker, clarity. I excused myself quietly to the kitchen. The air smelled of vanilla frosting and burning candle wax. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, my voice steady, controlled. "It's time," I said softly, almost to myself. My hands didn't shake. My mind didn't waver. And then I listened, letting the plan I had rehearsed for months, the careful, invisible preparation, lock into place. By the time I returned to the dining room, they were still laughing. Mara didn't even glance at me. She thought this night was hers. Little did she know how close the hour of reckoning truly was. I stepped into the dining room, the soft scrape of my shoes on the wooden floor louder than I intended. Mara looked up Startled for a fraction of a second, but then her smile returned, confident, arrogant, unaware. Jason leaned back, stretching, still smirking. Everything seemed ordinary, ordinary enough that she wouldn't suspect a storm waiting in the next hour. I sat down, deliberately slow, my hands resting on my knees. More wine? I asked, voice calm, almost cordial. Mara's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded, pretending she hadn't just humiliated me in front of the person I once considered a friend. I poured myself a glass, lifted it to my lips, savoring the silence between sips. The room was warm, the candlelight soft, almost forgiving, but I felt nothing but ice. I watched them, memorized every gesture, every laugh, every glance. And then I spoke. Not to her, not to him, but aloud so the words would land like a quiet warning. You've made your choices. My tone was even, controlled, terrifying in its stillness. Mara froze. Her confident grin faltered for the first time tonight. Jason shifted, sensing something, but he couldn't read it. And then it happened. 1 hour passed in slow, deliberate perfection. I stayed calm, silent, every movement measured. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I didn't plead. The house held its breath with me. When the hour ended, the consequences hit. Mara's face, one smug and untouchable, drained of color. I stepped forward, hand on the door handle. No argument. No explanation. She realized too late that the life she had taken for granted, the trust, the love, the very essence of our shared years, was gone. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. I simply walked out, leaving the echoes of her laughter behind, a reminder that betrayal carries its own punishment. I left the house, and the night swallowed me whole. The cool air against my face, the distant hum of traffic, the empty streets. I felt free in a way I hadn't in years. I hadn't needed revenge. I hadn't needed confrontation. Silence, patience, and timing had done more than anger ever could. And as I walked, I realized this. Some betrayals aren't about confrontation. They're about reclaiming yourself, standing tall while the storm rages behind you. Mara had her choices, and I had mine, and mine had set me free. If this story moved you, leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, emotional stories that hit right where it matters.